Can you review the history of where the voluntary measures came from a little bit?
Well, initially, when this became a problem, it was what, 2009, and there were an awful lot of. There was a actual voluntary plan that had been worked up by the citizens that went and said, okay, we can do some common sense things right now because we just came out of an oil shock thing. So basically it was proposed that public buildings burn number 1 instead of number 2, which they are actually doing now. But it was such a fight and it was such a contentious issue until they actually did it. I mean, it's surprising. Then you had also in the proposals that were there simply teaching people about how to properly dry and season your wood. Well, part of the problem was that it was a shock. People didn't go into that spring or that summer realizing they were going to get hit by $4 a gallon fuel. So you had simple necessities said that, and it is reflected in some of the numbers of one of the slides that Sierra presented, because there was a dip and it was below containment in 2007, but you got the 2008, 2009, and boom, it was there. And it takes a couple years for people to line out their a wood source, get a better stove. So you actually saw a sharp decrease in PM2.5 in 2011.
But that was attributed to the weather.
Yes, that was attributed to the weather. And then we have 2012, which is a horrible year, yet that you have to also attribute to the weather, looking at the horrendous October, November, and December that we had. Mm-hmm. So
when you say horrendous, what do you mean?
Well, it
was cold, or there was an inversion, or what does that mean?
Well, it was extremely cold for extreme periods of time, which basically means you had cold air masses simply sitting there keeping you cold, which is a recipe for elevated PM2.5 levels. Mm-hmm. If you don't have systems coming in and out, you're not going to see any refreshing of the air or exchanging of the air, which is the whole problem with being in the Fairbanks North Star Borough bowl area. So they go and they plugged in all these numbers and they simply said from where we're at now in the high 50s because of, well, let's face it, the weather in October, November, and December were absolutely horrible, and people had the choice of either freezing or putting another log on the fire. So they're saying there's absolutely no way using using voluntary efforts that they will be able to reach attainment levels that the EPA has set. Groups that were concerned about this problem that back in 2009 got together and they went and proposed basically what we have right now, which was education, changing out of bad stoves, and the administration basically killed it and sat on it for 2 years. So when you go and you have a presentation saying that expanding the wood change-out program has negligible or marginal effects, there's no evidence for it. So what values are they plugging into their model that go and give them this assessment? Remember, this is all modeling. This isn't hard facts or this, that, and the other thing. It's interesting, the expanded wood stove change-out, where it seems to be such a small number, but we have to really look at it. They don't have the numbers to really work with to give a realistic impact because of the shenanigans of the borough. Initially, they went and they tried to put a poison pill in your application by saying that you will then have to surrender access to your home so that they could come in and test your wood to make certain that you were burning dry wood if you participated in this program. Then, when Prop 3 went and passed, they simply stopped the change-out program for a while, a number of months, and then, to make it even worse, because there were a lot of people who had already filed all the paperwork, they then said that everyone has to go and refile all their paperwork. And in the meantime, they are spending the change-out money on surveys and other items because the grant money language wasn't tight enough to make sure it was only spent on the wood change-out programs. So you end up having things like the survey that an awful lot of people who own wood stoves and other solid heating device appliances got phone calls in the not too distant past. I also received it. I received that phone call 3 times because I refused to participate. So,
Can you review what you said their assessment of the survey was when it comes to the local people wanting to, what they would do as far as burning wet wood?
The survey showed that there was a small number, I don't know the exact, but say 20% that said that they would be willing to pay another $50 per cord of wood to make sure that they were burning dry wood. But the vast majority of them basically said that if it was the only type of wood they could get and it was cold out, they were going to burn it. So their position is that education to go and solve this problem will not be a factor for solving it, because if people have a choice between freezing or not freezing, they're going to burn whatever type of fuel is on hand.
Okay, whose position is that?
It was presented as the position of the Sierra Research and the air quality people who were there. At the meeting, you had Jim Connor was present, you had the fellow running Sierra Research was there, and you had a state official for, DEC. So, and they did not disagree or contradict that statement. The presentation that they gave to the state interior legislators in 2010, it showed that only between 65% to 35% came from wood smoke, which is a far different proposition than claiming flat out that almost all of the PM2.5 particulates are coming from wood smoke. When they went many years ago, they claimed that most of the PM2.5 problem was caused by wood stove smokes and wood stove smoke. And the logical question to that was, how do you know this? And their answer was carbon-14 data. Well, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, well, let's put it this way. They fooled you when they said that. I was at a sulfur workshop in 2010 where I actually got some data numbers, and when they were talking and they were actually presenting absolutes, what just shook me to the core was when they claimed that this data was based on a handful of data points, or in many of the areas around the non-attainment areas, 1 or 2 data points. And then you have to look at your assumptions of an experiment where they claimed that all the wood being burnt was 200 years old, and which allowed them then to have a lower radiation count for their wood. Because the older it is, the less carbon-14 is present, because carbon-14 is only drawn up into the wood when it is alive.
But didn't we just find out that people are burning green wood from our telephone survey?
Well, no. See, carbon-14 goes and pointed out the fact that a lot of their assumptions were wrong, because they were tracking the carbon and trying to point that it was wood coming from wood smoke, not from vehicle exhaust or coal or from the other possible sources. So I always perk up when they go and they start talking about how they actually draw their conclusions, because you have to ask, are they questioning themselves, are they bulletproofing, to take out these systematic errors? And so far their track record has not shown me that I should have much faith in their conclusions, because they have been slipshod in the past. They were handcuffed or not allowed to start doing mandatory measures. They were only allowed to do voluntary measures by the people. If you look at the wording of Prop 3, it basically says that the borough is not allowed to regulate home heating devices. And that follows the gamut from coal to wood pellets, etc. So they, being the air quality division of the Fairbanks North Star Borough, had to go back to the drawing board as far as their strategies go. And as they were identifying coal hydronic, indoor coal, and so they're gathering information already on the specific location of all these solid heating device operators. So just think about that. And it all comes back to they want enforcement powers. And if you think the Fairbanks North Star Borough is intrusive now, they get any enforcement powers, you'll get a small taste of what living in a dictatorship really is. I would not be surprised at all if the Assembly goes and tries to put on the ballot next year to rescind Prop 3. So how many times does the voter have to say no before they know that no means no? The answer is never. They know better than you. Basically, they said, well, we've got some long-term programs that are under consideration, and that was expanded natural gas availability. On that front, provided everything goes through the legislative body, which it appears that it will be. I was at a presentation by Fairbanks Natural Gas, where he says that they will have LNG because they've got pretty much all the licenses, all the things that they need to do to go and actually build it and get LNG to Fairbanks by the fall of 2015. So, provided nothing unrails the train, so to speak, you actually have a hard date as far as LNG to Fairbanks. That also presupposes that you don't have any political machinations and shenanigans by certain people, that if they don't control a given project or a given bag of money, then they don't want anyone to have it, which you will, if you were paying attention, you saw from Energy Akura proposal not that long ago, and then AGPA supposedly, instead of looking at large diameter line, trying to get into the LNG trucking business. So, but that they have listed as a long-term proposal that's under consideration. The next long-term one is the wood stoves change-out program. They said basically it's expensive and it takes time. They pointed out that there were approximately 4,000 units out in the borough that should still be changed out because they don't meet EPA standards. My question with that, though, is there's 4,000 units out there. Even if you get the really fancy wood stove, you're looking at $2,000 a pop. We've got $3 million from the state last year simply for this program, do the math. It does not take that many more millions to where we should have been knocking those numbers down rapidly. We're not going to destroy our economy or give up our rights. So if as a community we hold tough against the EPA, they really can't do a whole heck of a lot.